Before the invasion of the Tyranids, before the Horus Heresy, and even before the fall of the Eldar, the Necrons have lain dormant, awaiting the time in which the Great Awakening would occur for over 65 million years. Billions waited undisturbed for this time, but many did not. Some awoke too early to find themselves trapped in their bodies, unable to move, whilst others were awoken due to being disturbed by other races. All, however, have changed the fates of countless species in the galaxy. But for one Necron in particular, his actions have caused ripples in the galaxy that have been felt for millennia. Wandering his halls of treasures and trinkets, Trazyn the Infinite has a track record of being a nuisance to anyone who might be or have something of historical importance. He is a Necron Overlord of the Nihilek dynasty, a dynasty that prides itself on the wealth that it has accumulated. But for Trazyn, whilst he certainly has his fair share of gold and jewels, they are not what he deems to be the most valuable items, especially when compared to his other collections. For his entire existence he has been the collector of items deemed to be important, and whilst not much is known about his life prior to biotransference due to protection protocols, what is known is that he was a chief archivist, and quite an old one for a Necron tier. Since his transformation into his Necron form, he has continued on with the self-proclaimed title of the Grand Archivist for the entire Necron species, and for good reason. With near immortality and an entire galaxy full of historical and cultural wonders, he has gained a habit of collecting items no matter their origin. This habit of his eventually turned from a hobby to an obsession, and has now become a kleptomaniac. But whilst he certainly loves collecting items for the thrill of it, his collection does serve a purpose. With Necron technology and the planet of Solemnace acting as his storage grounds, he has built a museum of the galaxy's rich and varied history, all for the viewing and amusement of all other Necrons once they do finally awake. Although not many appreciate the effort and lengths Trazyn has gone in order to collect these items, both in terms of the Necrons and those he has liberated the artifacts from. Trazyn is in all sense an obsessive jokester, with a tendency to pull either extreme acts or simple jokes to those in his way, or to those that simply annoy him in whatever capacity. And if it involves either his galleries on Solemnace, or the artifacts he wishes to display, then he will make sure that the one responsible for this desecration pays for it in whatever way he deems fit. On one occasion, an Inquisitor of the Imperium sent 5 regiments of Catachan jungle fighters in an attack. In response, Trazyn took these regiments and placed them in his galleries, whilst at the same time sending a formal message to the Inquisitor, thanking them for their generous contribution. This message also came with a gift attached onto it, a hyperstone maze which would trap the Inquisitor inside a series of tesseract labyrinths effectively forever. But for someone such as the Inquisitor, they would have a fun time trying to escape, being someone who clearly has an appreciation for Trazyn's work. But Trazyn's antics aren't just limited to causing major problems such as the one I have just mentioned. He has been known to purposefully perform actions that simply don't make sense for a Necron. He has been known to smile. Whilst this simply could be his biological nature taking over for a brief moment, for other Necrons it can be seen as a gesture to annoy them. Although it is difficult to know if Trazyn is intending for it to be an annoyance to others, as he does present features that he has no purpose in doing, such as walking with a hunch. What is certain though is that his annoying nature has caused some dynasties of the Necrons to outright ban him from visiting their worlds. Trazyn's collection includes Necron and Necron tier artifacts, and the only way to get these items is by taking them from other rulers. He has been forbidden entirely from the tomb world of Mandragora, as he attempted to add the Staff of the Destroyer to his collection. This staff belongs to none other than Imhotep the Stormlord, and should he step one foot onto the planet's surface, there will be no resurrections for him henceforth. But this is just one of many attempts at securing items such as these, and have earned him a persona non grata, meaning the same fate awaits him on many Necron worlds. But out of all of the Necrons that he has crossed paths with, there is one in particular that has proven themselves to be the most challenging to deal with. For all that Trazyn is worth, he is too caught up in the past, his obsessions, his attitude, and especially his galleries. He lacks vision for what could come to be should he continue his actions, and lacks any sense of the impact he has on others. At least this is the way that Orikan the Diviner sees Trazyn. Orikan is one of the most powerful cryptex for the Necrons, and was the only one to oppose biotransference. But since this time, he has found that out of all the beings in the galaxy, perhaps the most stubborn and arrogant is that of Trazyn the Infinite. Trazyn has been a thorn in Orikan's side for millennia, Whilst Orikan is constantly focused on the ever-shifting tides of the future, Trazyn has his eyes fixed on history that is set in stone. This rivalry, based upon opposing ideologies, has led them to engage in many squabbles over the past several thousand years. These have ranged from petty insults to apocalyptic events, invoking the Awakened Council to settle these disputes many times. And perhaps the most infamous of their disagreements were the events on the planet of Serenade. During Trazyn's travels, he came across an artifact known as the Astrarium Mysterious on the planet. Not known to him at the time, this was a device of great importance as it would help find the tomb of the Pharaon Nepref, a Necrontyr who was immune to the genetic disease that their species faced, and as such was preserved on the off chance that their species wanted to return to flesh and blood. Whilst Trazyn viewed this at the time as a replica, Orikan knew the truth and sought to steal it from the Galleries of Solemnace, thus inciting a squabble between them that lasted 10,000 years and caused utter chaos and destruction in their wake. Their initial arguments came in the form of hurtling offensive gestures to one another at a council meeting to discuss their actions, but it very quickly snowballed into entire armies facing off against one another in an attempt to get into the tomb, both wanting the valuables inside for different reasons. Trazyn, of course, wanting to add extremely rare items into his exhibits. This turned into a race against time, and so to gain an edge, Trazyn would take actions to impede Orikan's progress. One of the most extreme was unleashing an unknown alien lifeform to hopefully kill Orikan, but it was unsuccessful. Another instance showed Trazyn's cocky and irritating nature. As Orikan was attempting to decode the Mysterios, Trazyn hid amongst his ranks. He was caught, or at least Orikan thought. Instead, it was a decoy used to distract from the fact that Trazyn was attempting his getaway, his hands wrapped like a finger gun around the detonator. Orikan stopped the explosive, but Trazyn had one more trick up his sleeve. On the Mysterios was a tesseract labyrinth connected to one of his exhibits. As it opened, pouring forth out of this pocket were over 14 juvenile Catachan devils that Orikan now had to deal with, scuttling around his ship. But perhaps the pettiest moment between them was after Orikan caused damage to several exhibits on Solemnace. Stepping out of a hypospace oubliette in the Deathmark's body, Trazyn shot Orikan in the face. Orikan, struggling to stand, told Trazyn that he did not have the Mysterios, to which he replied, "You can keep it." Most of these actions resulted in collateral damage to others as well. An Orc war was unleashed that they had to stop. Another was a result of the alien lifeform that Trazyn released to kill Orikan. Due to the Tyranids being relatively unknown at the time to Trazyn, he didn't realise that releasing a Broodlord would cause an entire world to succumb to a Genestealer cult uprising, leading to the exterminatus of Serenade. Although eventually these two did work together, and once they managed to enter the tomb on Nepref, it was discovered that this whole time they were being tricked by 5 or 6 shards of a Catan known as the Deceiver. And after a long and arduous battle where Orikan achieved godhood for a few moments, the Deceiver was defeated, and its remnants captured by Trazyn to be placed on Solemnace. Orikan and Trazyn after this battle did seemingly lose their hatred towards one another. For over 10,000 years they had a bitter rivalry, but now they had grown to somewhat care about each other. This, however, did not last. Orikan and Trazyn's hatred quickly bloomed again, and after all they had been through together, their arrogance got the better of them. Whilst their feud continues, their lives have gone back to a sense of normality for them. Orikan continues to peer into the future, and for Trazyn, he still continues to fill his halls with the galaxy's rarest of artifacts. The halls of Solemnace are exquisite. Religious icons, weapons, military leaders, and a plethora of other trinkets all filled the Tomb World's chambers. All that exists in his collection has been organised and catalogued extensively. From the War in Heaven to the Horus Heresy galleries, each section serves a particular purpose. Of course, the galleries include notable events in history, but much like Trazyn's mannerisms, there are some things that simply don't make sense. One collection includes a wine cellar, and it has been pointed out to Trazyn that the Necron simply cannot utilise it in any way, but he does not care. He will continue to collect items no matter where they're from, or whether or not they serve a purpose to him, simply because he enjoys it. But with that being said, his exhibits have been known to cause frustration due to their erratic nature. Whilst his exhibits are mainly housed in hard-light chambers, meaning that they are essentially frozen in time, some have been known to escape and wreak havoc. There are security protocols in place to ensure that no exhibit should escape, but it isn't always perfect. If a being is sentient, he may utilise mind shackle scarabs to essentially become a puppet under Trazyn's control, but not everything can be controlled via this method. in which case if something does escape that cannot be controlled, they have to be purged. Trazyn usually leaves the dirty work to Immortals, but should he need to, he can utilise his empathic obliterator to mop up the mess. Though this is deemed to be wasteful, as there are some things in the galleries that are simply irreplaceable. Even so, Trazyn has been known to get rid of exhibits. One such example is the Bell of St. Gerstal. Upon the arrival of Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade, the bell started to toll 13 times, and with each toll, it shook the exhibits around it, causing irreparable damage to some. So that this could not happen again, Trazyn threw the bell into the Eldar webway, hoping that it would annoy them as much as it annoyed him, after which he left for Cadia to view the battle for himself. Trazyn has also been known to utilise the contents of his exhibits during battles. Seeing as he is not a fighter, he will use a Tesseract Labyrinth to create a gateway connecting to his galleries and force his opponent to fight against whatever comes from it. Some examples of him throwing out units onto a battlefield have been Drukhari, members of the Adeptus Mechanicus, Orcs and Imperial Guard regiments, just to name a few, but these are the more common and tamer pieces of his collection, for Trazyn has horrors that could spell doom for the entire galaxy should they escape containment. We have already covered some of the more terrifying exhibits of Trazyn's collection, including Shards of a Catan, but this is just one of many things on Solemnace. Some of the less notable but still interesting exhibits include a Tau watercast that was sent to negotiate with Trazyn, Astartes of the Salamander's Legion, and a statue of Trazyn himself after he was mistaken to be a Space Marine librarian of the Silver Skulls chapter after he helped defend the world. Another exhibit contains Brother Casil of the Blood Angels chapter, who caught in his last moment shows an expression of fear. Trazyn likes this exhibit in particular for its irony, but none of these can compare to the grander collections. Here you can find an Adeptus Custodes, a Krork from the War in Heaven, and even an entire hive fleet from the Tyranids that are about to commence an invasion of a world. Although unfortunately for Trazyn, the hive fleet had to be purged as they had a habit of escaping. Other exhibits have been traded for as well. In a trade with Fabius Bile made a deal to collect 18,000 samples of pure Emperor's Children gene seed for a perfect clone of the Primarch Fulgrim, but one exhibit proves to be a greater cause of concern to Trazyn. Not because of how much damage it could cause to his exhibits, but to Trazyn and the rest of the galaxy as a whole. In one section of the galleries is an ossified husk of an enslaver, and even though it is very much dead, Trazyn has a habit of poking at it with his staff to ensure it does not somehow spring back to life. These are just some examples of his galleries, though there are far, far more than we can possibly ever know. And whilst Trazyn has proven himself to be a nuisance to all, he will never stop collecting items to add to his collection. Whether it be a piece of pottery or a world-ending weapon, he will find a way to contain it. For to Trazyn, this isn't just his hobby, this is his life.